Hey, what's up, guys? Node Investor here. Man, it's never fun to wake up to another day of selling. I was hoping we were done with this, but I want to go through the charts. I want to talk about, kind of a little bit of history. Right now, the selling that we're seeing, the intensity, the magnitude. Last time we saw anything near this type of action was probably September, and even then, that's starting to feel not as bad as what we're seeing here today and the last 2 days, really, right? So I kind of want to show you guys some of that, some of the perspective, some of the things I'm seeing. Really, I guess the mindset approach, right? When things are just this oversold, this stretch, um, it's hard to say, right? Do you sell at the lows here? Because when you look at the big picture and you think, okay, in a week from now, how is it going to look? Are we going to be higher? Are we going to still be bouncing here at these levels? Are we going to be lower? Right. So when you take that perspective and think, okay, if I ride this out for a couple of days or a week, is it going to be, advantageous to just hold, or do you raise some cash on the bounces and try to catch an even lower dip? And right now we're kind of in that middle ground. And so let me zoom in on the chart. This is the daily chart of BTC here. And let me zoom in a little bit to let me get to my right screen here. Sorry about that. To kind of draw some of that, right? So we were talking about the last little consolidation. The first major support was, it's kind of hard to see, but there was a few days of action there. That's not a strong support level, no doubt, but we're basically right there. We've tested that a couple of times here, and that's where we're at on that chart. Volume is feeling very much like capitulation, but the RSI is at 30. That's what we were kind of all looking at. Is it going to bottom here? We're trying to bounce. Maybe that 10K level is the new support psychological level. Below that, seems like a lot of buyers start showing up pretty quickly. Are we going to get to that 8K level that everyone's talking about? I think the more people expect to see it, the less likely it is to happen. You'll see more buyers start stepping in. But just from the big picture, right? So I want to cover that first. We went from one extreme to the other on the RSI. When you look at how far it's fallen, right? When you look at the big picture and you look at it in terms of weeks, this cycles back and forth over a longer wave. And so we're closer to that bottom part. And how is this proven out in the past, right? So you see what we had here. Now, this was a little bit faster of a drop. But we basically went from, one extreme down to the other relatively quickly here. And you can see this drop here happened very quickly, oversold, but it felt like a long time at the time, right? That was basically 3 weeks of September, a little less, but we saw that drop. And then this one was the long grind down from June that culminated at the lows in July. We're feeling a little bit more like this right now, but you can see what happens every time we hit these extreme lows. I'm not saying we go straight up from here, but we find a place where the price just starts to settle out, and then we start to build momentum, right? So when you look at it a few weeks out, you extrapolate that. That's kind of what I'm taking that approach right now. You can see another scenario here where we were very choppy. This was rough in March, and then once we found that low point, we started to move out. And the other thing too is how extremely overstretched we are from some of the shorter term moving averages, and I like to use that as a gauge just to kind of get a feel for how far prices have come in the shorter time frame. So if you look at the 10 EMA here, currently we're about 22-23% from that point, and at one point we were down 28%. And there's been few times that it's been that far down from that moving average. Here during the first big sell off, right, that was 30%, so that was pretty extreme, but we snapped back pretty quickly here on that one. This time we're kind of just it's lingering here at the lows. In September, when we saw that sell off from that high, and you can use the green wick, which was the extreme low before we bounced, we're 25-26% there, which is basically where we're at today. And if you go back to this one here, there was two of them to look at here, right? So this one dropped down 20% from there, and this one 17%. So not as bad, but that was because it was a little bit more of a slower grind. Let the moving average catch up with it. But you look at the RSI, it finally bottomed out around that 28 level. And we can keep going back. I was looking in time to see, was there any time period that was worse than what we're seeing now? And I think you got to go back to 2015 to see something of that magnitude. I mean, here, there's this one in 2016, right? That was a pretty big, like 3 days of craziness. But even then, that was down 27% before it snapped back. 2015 was probably the biggie here. Let me go. You can see right here, right at the lows. This move down was almost 45%, I believe, 50%. It's kind of hard to see here, but peak to peak, 45%. So that's a huge move. And the thing is, these were all quick, right? These were 2 days, and then look at how quickly it snapped back, right? We basically rallied 70% within the following week. I'm not saying we're going to go 70% up, but they tend to snap back pretty quickly when we see those extreme sell-offs. And so that's the question, right? If you're sitting in Bitcoin right now or alts, do you ride it out? Do you wait for that? Or do you sell into the bounces and build up some more cash in the event we down and start to see that 8K level tested? Now, if we zoom in a little bit and go to that 4-hour chart, there's, again, I was kind of doing that back testing, and there's been very few times where it looked this bad in terms of the number of 4-hour bars and the intensity on the downside. I mean, you can see here just from this break at that mid 13K level. I mean, we went down, not counting this most recent bounce bar, but we were down, 33% in 10 4-hour bars. And so that's pretty intense. There's been a few other times where it's been that bad in a culminating effect, and the volume's certainly there. So, what I'm trying to say is it's kind of it's a unique selling. We see sells and little mini crashes all the time. This one's feeling like it's one of the big ones, right? It's not the run of the mill. It's certainly, we haven't seen something this of this magnitude since probably September is the last time I would say we saw something this big. And so let me I've got my other window closed. Let me pop over to the chat box, see if we got anything going here. So hey, Melissa, we got Ken, and I know that we got quite a few guys on the call here. So looking at the alts, right? I'm looking at some of the alts in BTC. So a lot of you guys ask, is the BTC value of my account or the USD value of my account more important? And certainly the USD side has been feeling the pain. Not as bad as if I would have just held from the very top to the bottom, obviously, but certainly feeling the pain. But what I'm looking at is the USD side, or the BTC side. It's not bad, right? It's actually been holding okay. Some of the alts are taking a hit, but all around, it's actually holding up pretty well. But it's down from a USD side because I've been in and out of BTC here. But what I'm looking at is when you start to see Bitcoin hitting the lows, right? When it starts to get to these levels, and this is my approach, I want to start looking at BTC value at that point. I want to start accumulating BTC because I expect that it will start to turn around, right? And you want to be in that position. And so you do that either by getting out temporarily and get back in at a lower price, or start finding those alts when they start to bottom and outperform Bitcoin. Because like when we saw this big pull down and the one in September, once it starts to bottom out, Bitcoin starts to rally, the name of the game at that point is let's start accumulating some more BTC. You want to have as high of a BTC value going into one of these type of moves, because then at that point your USD or your cash or euro or whatever position really starts to grow at that point. So that's kind of the approach, right? Up here at the highs, it was more let's preserve cash, and trading alts and BTC value grows and all that. But here at these lows, it's kind of like, okay, how low is it going to go? Could it go down to 8K, 7K? I mean, that would be scary. But I mean, at that point, you're talking another 20% from here, 30%, right? So you got to ask yourself, are you willing to live with another 20 to 30% decline from current levels? And if not, then sell into the bounces, raise some cash. In the event that happens, you can buy back in partially there at these lows and offset some of the the losses from up here. So that's kind of the mindset here with this recent bounce, right? My last couple of buys yesterday were in that 10.4, low 10K range. So not a huge delta from where we're at right now. I mean, we're basically it's 4 or 5% to the downside, right? In the big scheme of things, it's not that big of a deal. But I'm starting to look at the alts. I'm looking at these oversold conditions. I'm thinking, okay, yeah, we could see some more downside, but it's just feeling like we're due, and I've been saying that for a day, and it feels like a long time in crypto. But like I said, when you start taking that look out, right, you start looking at where will we be in a week, right? Where will we go in 2 weeks? Between now and then, I'm thinking we're going to see a bounce, right? And it's kind of the patient game at this point, almost taking the, start building the positions and looking for some kind of a swing trade type of mentality, if you will. But if you're not comfortable and it's scary and stressful, and I get all that, selling into some of these little short-term bounces, at least where you get close to break even or something like that helps. And then you go from there, right? So question there, am I going to hold if we hit 8K? I wouldn't sell at 8K if we go sub 8K, just because I think if we did see those prices, we would have a snapback and we would rally at that point, even if it was a temporary. So if we wake up tomorrow and I see $8,000 Bitcoin, I'm not going to hit the sell button at that point, right? If you're going to hit the sell button, you hit it now, right? When we're at 10K, we bounced a little bit, and then you wait it out. And if we do hit 8K, well, you're 20% lower at that point, or in, right? So if you're writing it out and you get to those extreme levels, you don't want to sell at the lows, right? I mean, that's just really, I know it's scary and it goes against most psychology, but you want to sell when we start to break down, or you want to sell into the bounces, but you don't want to sell, if we hit 8K, RSI is going to be into the 20s. And that's usually not when you want to sell, when we're that extremely oversold. At that point, you want to kind of try to hold as much as you can and look for those bounces and sell into that. So that's me. I mean, if you're feeling like, hey, we could see 8K, then you're selling into these bounces right now, basically. So let's take a look at what this bounce is looking like. Volume here in the last few hours here has been higher than yesterday, so that's crazy to see more selling coming in. We're basically bouncing into some of this what we broke down from earlier. So let me kind of highlight that. And so this is going to be interesting to see if we hold here. Volume is coming down a little bit right now. I'm going to see if this is it. Now on the 4-hour, again, got a long ways to go from the moving average. And on the hourlies, trying to bounce here, make above, but I'd like to see a lot more volume come in. It's definitely above average here at these lows. And so maybe we find that floor around that, in and around that 10K level. This is on Bitstamp. How's it looking on some of the other exchanges here? Let's see. So we're about, oops. Yeah, so I mean, you noticed that Binance gap narrowed quite a bit. Man, it was dollars yesterday. It just that arbitrage window was hard to take advantage because of the mempool, and just the BTC transactions wouldn't allow you to move fast enough to do that. Keep doing it. Sorry about that. But let me move my chart here. So, I mean, you're seeing this double test on Binance. It looks a lot different because yesterday we hit extreme levels compared to most of the other exchanges. And so right now we're kind of double testing that, trying to find a little bit of a low here at that same point on Binance. On most other exchanges, we certainly undercut. And right now we're bouncing right back into that point. So kind of middle ground. Let me go to GDAX here real quick. Then I'm going to cycle into some of the other big names that I'm looking at here. And see how they look versus BTC, right? Because if some of the alts versus Bitcoin are extremely washed out, then another way to recover the account, if you will, is when you look at some of those and they're at the bottoms, you start moving into some of those for more of a intermediate play, right? I'm not saying it's a day trade, it's going to bounce today, but when you look out a few days out and they're at those lows, will they outperform Bitcoin? And if they do, even if Bitcoin sits tight for a while, right, you could gain 15-20% on the upside, and that'll more than offset this little pullback, or not little pullback, but this little crash we've had in the last couple of days. And so I'll look at some of those names that and they're going to be kind of more the quote unquote safer names, right? That'll give you that. Certainly the smaller cap names, they'll outperform by leaps and bounds. But the question is which ones, right? And it's always coins you don't expect a lot of times. So looking at GDAX again, a pretty big double bottom now. We had that little one yesterday. This is a much bigger one here today with the RSI. It's really starting to confirm on that end. On the 1 hour, looking at the 4 hour charts, man, we hit 16 on the RSI there at one point. So just crazy oversold levels. On the daily chart, again, 30, 31 on the RSI. So getting pretty close, seeing if we can bounce here a little bit. If it just goes sideways, this moving average is going to catch up, and then yeah, we could see that next leg down. So I'm going to give it another couple hours. If we see what kind of a bounce we get here, if we do get a little decent of a bounce, right, if we start getting into that 11K range, might raise a little cash, or just move into some of the alts to try to outperform a little bit there. In the event we do see some of that downside action again. Let me go back to the window, and then I'll let me see here. I'll look at some of those. Yeah, GDAX does look a little bit better here. The daily BTC looks like a double top, and that's exactly what it is, right? It's a huge double top that it broke down from. So let me go back and look at that. And so when I say raise cash, I mean, selling into like a Tether or whatever, or if you're on GDAX, you can sell into USD. That's what I mean. So going into cash, right? So right now I'm BTC basically 100%, and on the bounce, maybe you sell some of that and sit, parking cash on the sidelines, a percent of your account, in case we start to pull back again, because usually the bottoms are tested, right? So you'll see this rally, and then maybe we pull back again, just like we saw overnight. We're bouncing now. Maybe that was the test, but we could see another test of the that mid 9K range or whatever. And if it breaks, then you'll see that maybe an 8 in front of the number. I hope not, but man. So yeah, on the daily chart, that's if you look at the neckline here, certainly a big double top there that we're seen play out over the course of a month and a half or so. And so you can see that pull back. I mean, this undercut it, but that's really the neckline was at mid 12K, rallied to 17, and then here we are breaking below. And so kind of in the middle ground right now. Could it go lower? I keep saying it could, but that 8K range, right? That's what everyone's talking about. And maybe we just very briefly touch that, and then we're off to there. The problem with selling at the lows is if you get one of those snapbacks, they happen very fast, and so you might not be able to catch it, right? So let me go to one of these other ones back here. Where am I on time here? Let me go 1 hour. I'm trying to go back to the September one, and you can see even here at some of these. Let me zoom out a little bit, maybe not. I hate those wicks on GDAX. They really mess up the chart. So here's June, right? So you can see during that big sell-off there at the lows, wicks, right? So they go down another quick, 7, 8, 10%, but then the falling bar goes up, and it's hard to catch those extreme lows, unless you're really watching those. Where's my charts are a little wacky here right now, sorry. There it is. That's what I was looking for here, right? So it was like selling, 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 selling. And man, if you didn't catch that bar, I mean, that's, if you rode down this whole 20% move, right? That was a massive, 4-hour bar, 30% to the upside. And so that's always a challenge with selling at these lows is, do you see some of that? Do you see a big pop to the upside? And at that point, if you're jumping at the top, then you would have been just better off kind of writing it out. It's a little scary to write it out though, because you just never know, like how low is it going to keep going? Or where's the bottom? And nobody knows. I mean, at the end of the day, you can look for the signs and you can look for the signals that, hey, maybe we're getting close, but at the end of the day, the actual price points, you can look at resistance points, you can look at fib retracement pullback levels, you can look at all that, where it finally settles, where the buyers start to show up. It's ultimately a guess. You can get close, but it's usually a guess at that point, unless you're in the know, unless you're one of the big market people. Let's see here. Let me look at some of the questions here real quick. We'll look at Neo. Oh, on Binance, your cash question on Binance there. You don't have access to your USDT. Are you talking about like pulling USDT off of the exchange? Or because if you sell into Tether, then you buy back in from Tether. So there is just the same way you sold on the exchange, there's the market. I think that's what you're asking. So if you can't find it in your, like when you look at your funds, when you minimize, or you can even do a search by USDT to trade from Tether, go ahead and ping me on Slack. But if you sell into USD Tether, then you buy back in from Tether. So Tether is locked. Okay. I'm not sure. I'll have to take a look at that. But any exchange that has that, you might not be able to withdraw Tether, but trading it shouldn't be locked. So unless that's something new that you guys are aware of, but I'm not aware of anything from that perspective. Let me look at some charts here. Let's go to, so some of the big names that I was watching earlier that potentially could start outperforming in the near term. So if you're, holding 100% BTC, maybe do you get in some of these other names? So I'm going to look at the BTC pairs on some of these. So starting with Litecoin, right? It's finding some support here at these lows. These big wicks are trying to come in. RSI is definitely not oversold. Now, if the RSI on the Litecoin BTC pair was, down at the 30s, I'd probably be going 100% Litecoin versus BTC. And when it bounces, right, expecting that Litecoin would outperform even more. So that's what I'd be looking for. Now, certainly not there yet, just because it's had such a big run here recently. So, we're 64 RSI, so probably not the candidate for that. Could it bounce in the near term? Yeah, look at the 4-hour chart. You're seeing very oversold on the 4-hour, right? We're hit down to 30. And so versus BTC, as Bitcoin starts to find a bottom, you're seeing these outperform by a pretty decent magnitude, right? 6, 7%, 5%. And so that's pretty good. That same pair on Litecoin, look at how low it got there. 22 RSI at these lows. Here we are bouncing into that moving average, but already popped 8% versus BTC. And so start looking for those type of scenarios. I wouldn't probably pick the really smaller cap names, just because I think they might not bounce as for a longer time, right? They might be a shorter term lived, but Ripple, not quite as strong here at the lows. Well, man, that doesn't look like a lot, but man, that's bounced 11% versus BTC. So that's quite a bit. Maybe it's got more to go then on the upside. This one's just been so beat up. And this is versus excuse me, that's not. That's why I was confused. Here we go. That was the USD Ripple pair. Let's look at the BTC Ripple pair. Okay, so about 4 or 5% is what it's outperformed here so far, but not huge. Now, be nice to get something like that, right? If you're on it, get a 20% outperform. And if you get something like those kind of pops in the short term and it takes the RSI up, you kind of sell into those strengths, in my opinion. Let me see here. Let me go to Bcash versus BTC. On the 4-hour again here, near the lows. On the daily, about 40 RSI, not really extremely at the lows there yet. So anything else? Dash, that's a good dash. On the 4-hour again versus BTC, a lot of these are just really, they're trying to find a low. So might be time to maybe move into some of these alts, maybe for a swing or a couple of days, or not days, but maybe a couple of 4-hour bars here, a few 4-hour bars, or maybe a day or so. If Bitcoin does start to find a low at these points, then you might see some of this outperform. Some of the stronger names I was looking at, EOS, let's see how that one's holding up. I was watching this one on the daily, holding that 10 EMA, seeing if it could find a low there. It's trying. It's still under, starting to undercut it a little bit. Still not above the trend though here on this 4-hour chart here. Ethereum Classic, that was getting hit pretty hard yesterday. Not quite a strong bounce, and not a lot of strong volume here. Some of the other names, the other ones that were bouncing yesterday, Neblio was a big one. You can see versus Bitcoin, it's already well off the lows and trying to resume an uptrend here. Just in the last day and a half or so, I mean, it's huge off the lows, right? 60%. So tons of volume coming in too. So pretty bullish action there. Pulling in a little bit here, see if it sets up another secondary entry. That'd be one to look at. VeChain was one that was holding out pretty good versus BTC. How's that looking right now? Still kind of going sideways. Now on the daily, right, that one's not coming off the lows, right? That's kind of putting in a little bit of a bull flag here. So you got to keep in mind, right? Is that going to really outperform? I'd like to buy something that was a little bit more beaten up, but a stronger name. Substratum, smaller cap, trying to bounce off the lows. This one's a good one too, from a project perspective, and even just a bounce in that moving average, right? That's 15% or so versus BTC. And so that's always nice, because if your BTC value goes up by 10, 15%, and the price comes down a little bit, it's kind of a wash. And if you ride it out, when it starts to rally again, you're net ahead on those, right? So that's kind of the approach that I'm looking at right now. Let me see here. My screen is blurry. Anybody else having issues with that? Sorry about that. It's got to be the live stream feed, because it's coming across okay on my side. All right, let's take a look at NEO. Trying to hold at the highs here. Man, NEO, did you see NEO USD? Sheesh. It was down to testing that $100 mark again twice. Like, what a huge reversal from 190 down to $100 very quickly. See near term on the 1 hour. So we were trying to pop off the low. Some volumes coming in here. I think some of the longer term buyers are thinking this is too good of a bargain, maybe at the $100 range compared to where it was just at. So rallying off the lows, had that 31% bar, 1 hour bar, pulling in a little bit here. Just hit some really extreme levels, these lows. That's 17% off that. How's it look versus BTC at that shorter term time frame? You see 1 hour. This is on Binance. Pop putting a little bit of a bull flag here. So if it can hold, maybe we see another leg up, and might be a good secondary entry on NEO versus BTC. Mise Go got hammered. Let me take a look at that. Okay, cool. My screen's coming across. Okay, good. Yeah, just let me know, guys, because I always assume voice and screen and everything is working when I can see it just fine. So um, hopefully you guys can. It sounds like you could. So all right, let me look at BNB real quick, see how that's looking. I was looking at that at the live stream yesterday, and it looked like it was getting beat up pretty good here. Um, just crazy sell volume coming in off the top here. So probably not going to get near that one yet. Yep. Omise Go. Let's see here. OMG. Let me look at that one on Bitfinex versus BTC. Yeah, down pretty big. And see, a lot of these guys, look what they did on, when you look at the RSI, has just kind of gone from one extreme to the other. Those are longer term entries are probably not bad, right? When you see those type of things. Now the dailies, I mean, it'd be great if the daily chart have done that, right? When you see this, and that takes months, right? Obviously, but like we saw it here and here, right? Those are some longer term, very longer term entries. You can get pretty aggressive on the daily when it's that way versus BTC, because even if you don't catch the exact lows, right, you're pretty close, and you can see you didn't have to catch the exact low to get 100% move plus that on the very low, which nobody ever gets to the very low unless you get really lucky and that's your first entry. Up 300%. So kind of rounding the corner here a little bit on some of these. I think near term, they'll outperform just because they're so beaten up near term. But on the daily charts, they probably still have a ways to go. And the other thing I got to consider too is the coin market cap. The dominance, the BTC dominance was just so low for a while. It was 32%. And so you have to wonder, is some of the alt money going to flow back into that? Maybe on some of these bounces, just because everyone's feeling the pain on some of the alts. Versus USD, this is bouncing pretty good here. Up already 17% or so, 15% from the lows, depending on how you measure that. I mean, if you go the exact low, peak to peak, right, that's 16, 17%. Not a lot of volume, though, considering. Not big buy volume. Not the kind you'd like to see. Yeah, that's versus BTC. What was some of the other names? Nav. Let me see here. I was looking at this one earlier. Nav. 4 hour, a little bit overdone. Trying to bounce here a little bit. Digibyte. You guys were asking me about Digibyte. Maybe it's giving you a lot back here, so might be done. Might be due for bouncing. This one bounces hard when it does. But I mean, even to bounce into that moving average on the daily is going to give you 20% on the 4 hour, probably. Let me see. We're right at the moving average. Next big resistance point is right around here, so 20-30% to the upside. Let me see here. Let's see, Wabi. And anything else you guys want to look at? We'll go back to BTC before we wrap it up. So just curious, I want to get a feel for the folks on the call here. Were any of you guys, well, I know some of you guys were. Let me ask it this way. Who was not around in the crypto space prior to October? In and around that time frame. Let's see here. So I'm looking at Wabi in the meantime while you guys post on there if you weren't around prior to October. Wabi, BTC here, kind of in the middle, right? We've had this huge rally pulling in. I'd like to see where this bottoms out. Let me look at the hourly. I mean, it's starting to make a series of higher lows. So if this trend on these dips might not be a bad entry on Wabi. Or you can see on the 1 hour, very near term, right? We're bouncing. So that kind of be the entry point if you like it. And near term, very short term stop would be just below this trend line, that 7%. Otherwise, big stop, right, is the test of that. I'm not sure I'd give it that much versus BTC though. Not at this point, right? If we were more in a bull mode and things were starting to pop and break out and sustain, then you can definitely go with wider stops. But right now, you got to keep it a little tighter, in my opinion. Unless you're just buying more of the longer term hold and you're taking these dips. This one, it's come down quite a bit, so I'm liking this one from a. I still think it's going to be a good project in 2018. But between here and the next week, how does it go versus BTC? It's kind of a tough one. Let me see here. We'll look at those. The whole market seems very manipulated. Yeah, it really does. And crypto still very much the Wild West. And it's not like stock market and futures and commodities where you can get put in jail for sharing information and insider trading and all that. I mean, there's none of that here. And so people are, there's things happening in the background, no doubt. And it's a very lucrative market and it's very volatile. And, people are going to take advantage of the fact that it's still very much unregulated in a lot of ways from that perspective. And so insider trading and all that doesn't exist in crypto. And so it's easy to push things around. Let's see here. Yeah, these last couple of pullbacks do feel different, right? Definitely. I'm reading your comments here, by the way. So we'll look at D&T. So most of you guys have been around starting January, May, July. You entered in December. Okay. And so the reason I asked that, because if you were around prior to that, if you went through the rally and then the pullbacks in 2017, right? We've seen these crazy sell-offs, and so I don't want to say they get less scary, but you kind of learn to handle them a little bit because you've seen the results, and it's very easy to forget because we move so fast in crypto. And very often what happens is we cycle through, right? You get these crazy pullbacks, everyone's scared, it looks like the end of the world, and then like a month later it's like the alt party or the BTC party, and everyone's just, the gains are huge, right? You get up 30%, up 40% in a day on some of these alts. And then everybody just forgets how bad it was 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, right? And so the reason I say that is because if this is your first go around on a big pullback like this, they very on the other side, very often it's just as big, and the volatility in the accounts can get extreme, but you kind of get a little desensitized. You learn to handle the swings and not panic sell at the lows and try to manage it a little bit tighter, right? And go there because, I've seen my account up and down huge amounts, right? I mean, it's scary amounts sometimes, but then you kind of ride them up and down. And when you start to do the math and go, okay, this is partly because BTC is down by this much. And if the price of Bitcoin goes to 13K, what does that translate? Right. And kind of puts things into a little bit more perspective. So, but no doubt this sell-off we're seeing here is a big one, right? I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It's certainly a big one. This is not a run-of-the-mill little pullback. This is a pretty steep drop. Let me see. ETFs come in. Yep, I think we're still going to see ETFs. So we've got a lot of May, a lot of July active since May. Some 2014 folks. Let's see here. Cool. All right. Thanks for joining, Brandon. I need to catch up with you later, man. Zencash. All right. So let's take a look at some of those. And then we'll go ahead and wrap it up. We'll take a look at BTC one more time and see how it goes. And I might have to just hop on again with the group later this evening. In light of this market action, it might just be good to do a couple a day for now. Don't get spoiled though, because I'm not going to do 2 live streams a day for the rest of the rest of the month. I hope we don't have to, right? Let me go to a BTC here real quick. So yeah, that bounce is fading a little bit here. Let me go to the 1-hour chart. Good news is at least the volume is not crazy big yet. Let me go to the 30 minutes. Take a little granular look here. Would have liked to see a lot more green volume coming in. So basically bounced right into that floor that it broke down from under, went up a little bit above and now kind of rolling over here and just very weak on the RSI on these bounces. I mean, nowhere near quick moves up. So that moving average on the 1 hour just continues to be that wall, right? And I was talking about that yesterday. We tested it. We're just can't seem to get above that. And that's going to be the first early signal, right? That maybe we're starting to see another bit more of a move to the upside when we start to close above that. We tried here about an hour ago, but next bar just kind of reversed all that. And here we are pulling in. So maybe we retest these lows here. That 10K right now seems to be, in and around that 10K, 9K level is we're seeing some pretty good buys starting to come in. How's it looking on Litecoin? Litecoin's holding up a little bit better versus BTC here. You see Litecoin USD. Had that big move off the lows, 150, 160. So let's give it a little bit here, see how it goes. Like I said, if you're in BTC or if you're holding alts, I'm always hesitant to sell at the lows, but could we go lower on the daily chart? Yeah, there's still a little bit of room to, I don't want to say a little bit, but there's, RSI has some room to go if it needed to, and then really, really bottom out. And so there's that possibility, right? So USDF. All right. Let me go back to your guys' comments here and look at some of these. Would I say the worst case scenario for BTC is 6K or 8K? I'm not ready to say 6K yet. That just sounds very extreme. I guess if you have to say worst case scenario, that's probably it. I just don't know if we'd see that yet. Now, in the longer term, right, if we entered a long bear market that just grinded its way down, maybe at that point, but in this current leg down, that just seems very extreme to the downside. Is 8K, that's kind of probably my worst case right now, that 8K level on the daily chart if we continue to just sell off here. But who knows? I mean, that's that maybe in the sevens, right? Is kind of my worst case, and these are the levels that I've been looking at here, right? This little range, give or take, pretty close there now. Been quite the move down in 2 days, just an incredible move down. I mean, these two daily bars down 20-30% 2 days. That's significant. Let's see here. Let me go to this chart here on Bitstamp. So seeing a little bit of selling, seeing if we can bounce, make a higher low here. Some of the other charts you guys wanted to look at real quick here. Zencash. Okay. District. Cardano, Lumens. Yeah, let's take a look at some of these. Then I'm going to have to hop off the call here in a few minutes, and then catch up with you guys a little later here. So let's see, real quick, looking at Cardano. This is the 30-minute, very granular look. Obviously, it's going to follow suit with BTC if it's coming down, but versus Bitcoin's trying to find a low here. On the 4-hour, man, this one's down at the lows pretty good here. Let me fix my charts. Still not looking bullish, right? The pattern itself is not a strong pattern, right? It's higher, lower highs and lower lows. That's still happening on the daily. We've come down quite a bit, but does it have room to go? Yeah, it probably does, maybe. Let me see. I'm trying to get my 50-day doesn't even show up on this one yet. So yeah, I'd So it's not like one of the stronger names. The project I like still. I think it's a good project, but near term, maybe good for a bounce play. District. Thinking I got to start getting back into my district position. So I did sell, on this crazy bar right over here, and it was just I had gotten in so low, and it was like market cap was 23 million. I had basically a 10x on the market cap, so got out of the way. I still like the project. Here at these lows, I'll probably start looking at it again for the longer term position there. The 1 hour, a little bit of a falling wedge on the 1 hour, so actually not a bad pattern. No, I apologize. That's probably more of a descending triangle. Not quite the falling wedge. The lower end of that was more of a falling wedge. That'd be a better pattern, but it's not. Feels a little bit more of a descending triangle type of look right now. What was the other ones? Let's see. I'll look at Pivx. Oh, Zencash. That's the one else. This one's pretty choppy. Very choppy here at the lows. I know that's a smaller volume name, so it's easier to move these. But on the daily, though, this was one I was watching back here. I was putting this little bit of a bull pennant, which it broke down from, unfortunately. But I was watching this one here, broke down. Here we are, rallied pretty quickly. Right now, feels a little bit double topish versus BTC, especially since it basically rallied right back to the old resistance point. So keep an eye on that. But the fact that this is just a steep move, this second low hasn't come in quite as much yet, so that's a positive there on the daily chart. On the 4 hour, it's just kind of forming more of a symmetrical type pattern, getting very, very tight on. Oops, wrong button there. So you can see right the higher lows trying to form here. See if we can get out of this range. There's a big range though on this one. It's still 40% to the top. Pivx. It's been holding up pretty good. Trying to rally here, finding some good support. Go to the daily chart on Pivx. Trying to recover a little bit from almost a double top that was forming here. See if it can bounce and negate that. If it does, right, then that's going to be good because this is, it wouldn't really be a valid double top if this is a higher low at that point, right? You're just kind of forming a tighter pattern, which is good, especially after a rally like that. So this one's actually holding up pretty good. Let me do the 1 hour on Pivx. That looks really nice right there, honestly. That's trying to test resistance here and breakouts on this little bit of a level here. So not bad. And that resistance really, if you pull that back a little bit, correlates with this prior point it broke down from right there. So that's going to really be the test if we can close above that. So, but this one's looking pretty good, honestly. Lumens. Didn't do lumens. Let me do lumens here real quick. I'm just reading some of these. COB futures contract expired today. CMEs. Yeah, CBOE is not as big of a market as the CME. So that's kind of really the one I'm looking at. And the expiry on CME is always the last Friday, business calendar Friday of the month. And so in this case, it's January 26th. And so the way they work, they're just rolling contracts, right? So there's the January contract, the February, the March. They go out a couple months, and that's when they expire. And it happens in the stock market too. You see, like on options expiry day, crazy and volatile, but it's usually the day of or the couple days before. I mean, we're still a ways out from a market perspective, right? I mean, the 26th is still next Friday, so I'm not sure that's driving this. That's still a ways out. But CBOE today, maybe that has something to do with it. I'll do lumens, and then we'll go ahead and wrap it up. Um, yeah, that one's starting to break support there, starting to roll over on that 4 hour. If you can't get above that here pretty quickly, this has the potential to maybe be doing a little bit of a double bottom in the very short term on the 4 hour. You can see here with this big wick and the second test of the low, but it's not looking particularly strong right now. Let me look at the 1 hour and just kind of fading at the rallies here so far. Maybe a little bit of double bottom though on that very short term time frame. So, all right, so let's let me go back to the BTC here real quick, and then we will wrap it up for now. So yeah, seeing some more pullback action. Let me see here on this 4 hour chart on Bitstamp. Let me clear my lines here. Just not able to rally above that, and the volume on that rally so far wasn't particularly strong. So go to Bitfinex. How's it look on Bitfinex? And then I'll do GDAX here real quick. That's the wall, man. That's really where it just keeps bouncing right into, and not able to get above it here in the last several hours. So if it starts to break below this big green bar that it tried to reverse, or this was a kind of a little bit of a spinning candle here at the bottom on the very short term. Be nice if we did a little bit of a inverted head and shoulder on the hourly. It's hard to see, but if we did one of these type of thing and maybe pulled back higher low and then started a rally, that might give us enough momentum to punch through and get above. But below this 9,400 or so, might be time to raise a little cash and then temporarily get out and get back in, see if I can catch an extreme low at that point. So that's what I'm looking at right now. It's down 8% or so from or 6% or so from those last entry points. So that's what I'm looking at. We'll have to see how this plays out in the next couple hour bars. If we can start to see some more green come in, then that'll be a good sign. So I might have to do another live stream later today, guys. Let me see here. Do I think institutional money is waiting on the sideline? I do. I really do. I think we're going to see some big money come in when they start to see Bitcoin bottom out here. Pivx. Yeah, you do like Pivx. I know you do. Pivx has been a good project so far, though. All right, cool. All right, guys. Well, appreciate you all. We'll talk to you.